Ever wondered what happens when the fiercest American general comes face to face with unthinkable evil? In April 1945, tanks of the U.S. 4th Armored Division burst into a seemingly peaceful German countryside, only to be stopped by a stench so vile it stole their breath. What they discovered at Ohrdruf would change General Patton forever and ignite a quest for justice unlike any in military history. You'll witness starving men in striped pajamas, a town forced to confront its own guilt, and the tragic aftermath that followed. Like and subscribe for more. April 4th, 1945. A gentle breeze rustled the budding leaves along the country lanes outside Gotha. The sun was warm, and wildflowers dotted the roadside. Yet inside the lead jeep of the 4th Armored Division, soldiers stiffened as an unbearable odor drifted back from the trees. It was no ordinary foulness. It assaulted their senses like decaying horsehair, burning flesh, like the very essence of hell. Men gagged and rolled down their windows. The driver slowed. The scent grew stronger. Inside the command car, General George S. Patton inhaled sharply. What kind of factory could smell this bad? He barked to his staff. Could be a munitions plant gone wrong, or a glue works, he speculated, rubbing his nose beneath his helmet. Officers scrambled to trace the source. "Sir, we'll investigate," one replied. By afternoon, a reconnaissance jeep hurtled back, its passenger ashen, trembling. "General, you have to see this yourself. You won't believe it." Without hesitation, Patton climbed in. Accompanied by aides, he headed toward the smell's origin, a place called Ohrdruf. Though modest in size, it was steeped in dread. As they approached the wire fence and guard towers, the smell grew unbearable. Patton's jaw clenched. Nothing in his 3 decades of war had prepared him for this. He stepped through the gates and nearly staggered back. Before him lay rows of huts, but the ground around them was littered with bodies, men emaciated to skin and bone, their hollow eyes glazed. Some lay in open sheds, doused with lime, that the SS had hurriedly poured to erase evidence. Others, too weak to walk, had been shot where they stood. In the far corner, survivors huddled against the barbed wire, their thin pajamas stained and tattered. They wept as Patton's tank rolled by. Their arms reached out, clutching the white star on the hull as if it were a lifeline. General Walton Walker's voice crackled over the radio. "George, you've got to see this yourself." Patton signaled a halt and motioned for General Omar Bradley and Supreme Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower to join him. These 3 pillars of Allied command, hardened by years of combat, stood in stunned silence as they entered the camp. At first glance, Patton's immaculate uniform and polished riding crop seemed incongruous. Yet with each step deeper into the heaps of corpses, his posture stiffened, his face drained of color. They passed the roll call square, once pristine gravel, now slicked with blood and excrement. Beside it, bodies were stacked like cords of firewood, naked, hairless, with bullet wounds at the base of their skulls. When Patton reached one pile, a frail survivor struggled forward on trembling knees, his eyes locked on the general's boots. He tried to bow, to kiss the leather, to express gratitude. Patton knelt and helped him to his feet. He brushed away tears, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "We're here now," he told the man. "You're free." They pushed onto a crude wooden block, stained dark, surrounded by iron hooks where prisoners had been hoisted and beaten until breath escaped. The prisoner guide, a once caged inmate who spoke perfect English, explained how the SS guards had taken delight in torture, how some men had been left dangling until they died of strangulation. Eisenhower's jaw dropped, his face ashen. Bradley could only stand, silent and shaking his head. Patton's initial shock gave way to a simmering fury. His lips pressed into a thin line, his white-knuckled hand tightening around his riding crop. He turned to a military policeman nearby. "Did anyone in the village know about this?" he demanded. The MP hesitated. "They claim they believed it was a prison for dangerous criminals, sir." Patton's laugh was low and bitter. "A prison? This stench covers half the county." They knew. Without waiting for orders from higher command, he strode toward his aide. "Find the provost marshal. Get me the mayor of Ordruff, his wife, the local doctor, the banker, the school principal, every person of influence in that town. Bring them here. Today." Confusion flickered across the MP's faces. "General, what if they resist?" Patton's right hand drifted to the ivory grip of his revolver. "They won't. If they balk, shove them in trucks. If they try to hide, use bayonets. I want every one of them to see what they've been part of." By dusk, a convoy of military police rolled into Ordruff. Men, women, teachers, tradesmen, all rounded up under Patton's order, were herded into trucks. They wore their Sunday best: neat suits, ties, dresses. Many sniffed the air in confusion, covering their noses with lace handkerchiefs, mumbling about an accident at a nearby factory. Their arrogance, their sense of normalcy, hung as weightless as the spring air. When the convoy returned to the camp gates the next morning, the townspeople disembarked under MP guard. They formed a single-file line. Patton stood before them, eyes cold as flint. "Keep moving," he told the guards. "No one looks away. If any of you close your eyes or turn away, prod them until they look straight at the dead." And so the procession began. Under a blazing sun, the civilians shuffled past the first mound of corpses. Their chatter died. Complaints ceased. The only sounds were the rattling of gravel and the fleeting buzz of flies. Faces ashen, the visitors stared at the hollowed remains of men who once woke each morning, just like them. A woman gasped and fainted. 2 MPs caught her before she hit the ground and shoved her forward. "Keep moving." They passed the whipping block, the bones of victims still embedded in the hook marks on the wall. They peered into open ovens where charred ash lay at the bottom, powdering the feet of the visitors. Patton's gaze never wavered from their faces, searching for that moment of recognition, of guilt. Some covered their mouths, some burst into tears. Others clenched their jaws, staring at their shoes, refusing to meet the eyes of the dead. When the mayor, pale and shaking, reached the front of the line, his lips quivered. Patton approached him. "Tell me you didn't know," he said, voice quiet but deadly. The mayor could only shake his head, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. Patton turned to his officers. "This," he said, gesturing at the camp, "is what denial looks like. Not sightless, willfully blind." The tour continued for 2 grueling hours. By the end, the once proud citizens of Ordruff were hollowed out, shattered by the reality they'd ignored for so long. When they piled back into the trucks, their silence was absolute. That night, Patton wrote to his wife, "I have never been more furious, yet I believe these people learned a lesson that will never fade." But the lesson proved unbearable for some. The next morning, MPs went to the former mayor's home to deliver further instructions. They knocked. No answer. They forced the door and found him and his wife in the living room, their wrists slit. A short note lay on the table. "We cannot live with this shame." When Patton learned of their deaths, He offered no sympathy. He merely nodded and remarked, "Two fewer Nazis to worry about." It may sound cold, but having looked into the hollowed eyes of innocent victims, he had nothing left for the guilty. The horror at Ohrdruf shook more than Patton. Eisenhower, always measured, emerged transformed. He foresaw a future filled with deniers, propaganda peddlers, those who'd claim these atrocities were invented. By nightfall, he decreed that every soldier, every unit within reach, must visit the camp, and that photographers and newsmen be summoned without delay. Every building, every body, every shredded uniform was to be documented. "Bring it all on record," he declared, "for the day will come when some bastard will say it never happened." In the days that followed, thousands of American GIs made the pilgrimage. Letters home glowed with righteous indignation. "Now I know what we're fighting for. It's not land or flags. It's the soul of humanity." One private scrawled in his diary, "I can never hate a German again, because there were good ones here, but I will fight forever to keep monsters like those away from the innocent." Ohrdruf, miscalled Ohrdruf by many, was small compared to larger death camps. Yet because Patton forced the townspeople to face the truth, its legacy dwarfed even Buchenwald itself. The friendly occupation would give way to denazification. The illusion of normal life in Germany was shattered. Patton, once criticized for leniency toward ex-Nazis, became the officer who exposed their crimes most brutally of all. George S. Patton will always be remembered for his tanks, his ivory-handled pistols, his fiery speeches on blood and guts. But on that bright April day, he set aside the soldier and became a witness to evil, compelling the world not to look away. The mayor of Ohrdruf could not live with his guilt, but thanks to Patton's unyielding orders, none of us can ever forget. If you'd like more stories like these, please like and subscribe.